Creed Aventus, Paco Rabanne's Invictus, Lowe's Paula Zabiza, Prada's Luna Rosa Eau Sport, Bulgari's Aqua pour Homme Atlantique. Can you guess what these 5 fragrances have in common? If you guessed whale vomit, you are correct. Yep, you heard me right. Whale vomit, aka ambergris, sperm whale bile duct secretions. Oh, and it doesn't stop there. There are hundreds, including some of the most popular fragrances out there for men that contain ambergris. In fact, some of the most prestigious fragrance houses seem to have it in about half of their total colognes. So what's the reason? Why is whale vomit used in beautiful fragrances such as Bois de Portugal that doesn't smell bad at all? It's because it helps to prolong the fragrance. And for years, perfumers have known this. In fact, whenever ambergris washes up on the shores, basically, this is something that the sperm whale will vomit up, and 10, 20 years, this is going to float around the ocean. In fact, usually the longer, the better, because it's going to become more white. It's going to be, in a sense, dried out in the center. It's going to become more pure from an ambergris perspective, the more valuable. In fact, some of these ambergris stones that wash up on the beach can be valued at over $100,000.
Here comes the money.
Here we go.
Now, I do want to point out, just because a house says it has ambergris doesn't necessarily mean that they're using high quality, pure, or not a synthetic version of it. And there are many synthetic versions of it, because I think it's only in France and Switzerland where they're actually allowed to use true ambergris. In the rest of the world, it's actually been outlawed, simply because I think people have a reaction to it, and they, whenever things are coming from animals in general, they're trying to move away from that because, they don't want to harm the animals. That being said, if ambergris is found on the beach, I don't think that's harming any animal. And why does this happen? Well, sperm whales, as many of you guys know, they eat squid, and squid do have some hard parts, such as their beaks, and the sperm whale cannot digest this. So what happens in its stomach is that part is kind of protected. Basically, you get this bile that forms on it, this waxy substance that protects the inside of the whale. And over time, I think the whale either craps it or it comes back up the front side. But basically, this is expelled. The longer it sits in the water, and again, we're talking 10, 20 years, the more pure, the lighter in color it's going to become. In fact, black ambergris has a strong smell to it, is not viewed or not nearly as valuable as when it becomes grayer and then eventually white. And it's that high quality ambergris which a lot of the perfume houses are going after. It's not going to really have any scent. It's going to prolong the life of their fragrances, and in general has been a go-to ingredient. Again, now they're creating synthetic versions of it, and I'll talk a little bit later in the video about synthetics and how they're different from naturals. And exactly, they're not always better, they're not always worse, they're just different. Point being is, you do see this in a lot of higher end brands. They did view that as a high quality ingredient, and it is expensive when you get the real stuff. So if you thought that first ingredient was weird, this one is going to blow your mind. Beaver's anal secretions. Yes, and it's in a fragrance that I'm wearing right now and I absolutely love. Specifically, we're talking about Castoreum. Now guys, I have no idea what the story is and how the first person found out that the anal secretions of a beaver smell like vanilla, but apparently they do. I don't know this from experience, but I will tell you, in most fragrances produced nowadays, unless you're finding something vintage, they are not using anything from the animal. They've all gone towards synthetics. But up till the 18th century, those anal secretions from the beaver were actually viewed as something that they were used in medicine. Apparently, Castoreum was believed to actually have medical properties. It was believed that the great smell would treat hysteria. It was great for headaches. I'm not sure if it actually worked for anyone, but I will say that it was something that was used commonly in perfumes whenever it was discovered that this had a smell and it would stick around. And of course, it did have a bit of an animalistic property to it as well. Now, Castoreum has also been used in classic leather-themed fragrances. So fragrances like John Varvatos' Dark Rebel, which is a very strong, manly fragrance, Castoreum was used. Not the real stuff. They're using a synthetic version of it. But when you wanted something that had a bit of an animalistic, a little bit of an earthy leather smell, still a bit sweet, Castoreum was your go-to. Now, really quick, I want to talk about the difference between synthetic and naturals, especially in older fragrance. You're going to see Yadigan, a great example. Castoreum is listed as a note, but if you get a modern version of this fragrance, it's going to be a synthetic. But if you get the original, came out in 1978, you will probably have real Castoreum in that one. So what are people that had the original going to say? That stuff was stronger, it lasted longer, it had more power, it had more depth. And they're probably right. In synthetics, what you see is you oftentimes get a version, you get a shadow of the original fragrance. If you look actually at the molecular build, synthetics take what they believe that we can pick up in our nose, but molecules that we smell are oftentimes very complex. We're talking they've got dozens, if not over 100 different parts to them. When you get a synthetic, you get down to the bare essence, and they only replicate the part of the molecule that they know that our receptors and they're sure are going to be able to pick up, and it smells very similar, but it oftentimes doesn't have the depth, and that depth is there in a lot of times the natural notes because they're going to have all the other things that you're not sure exactly if we even pick up, and not everybody can, but some people can. All of that extra gives it depth. It gives it what many people view as, something that can't be replicated without great expense. That being said, my personal opinion, I'm very happy that they come out with synthetics, because do I need the original Antaeus, which an amazing fragrance by Chanel, but do I need animals? I don't need any animal components in my fragrances. Maybe it's not going to last as long, but I can tell you this is still an amazing fragrance, and for me is this is a really good one. I've actually got it on a solid pick, even if I do maybe smell like a beaver's ass. And speaking of fragrances that smell like ass, let's talk about fragrances that contain civet. So that note right there, again, this is a cat-like animal. And again, we're just fixated, I guess, on anal secretions. Maybe it's a nature thing, but I mean, that animals go around spraying their territory. And apparently with the civet, this is one that they found they could use in fragrances, again, to prolong their length and the strength and projection of the fragrance. And anyone that used to have the original chorus can tell you that that stuff was stronger than what they're putting out today. In fact, the original stuff was lethal. It could kill people if you were in a room too long with them. This stuff, well, it'll maim them. It could, cause long-term damage to the nose, but, it's not killing people. Point being is, yes, the original stuff is usually stronger that used the original ingredients. That being said, nowadays, again, they're not using animal products in most of these because it's being regulated, it's being outlawed, and, I think it's a good thing. Now, when you see a fragrance house that's using the civet note, understand that this is going to have an animalistic property. It's going to have a little bit of a musky, it's hard to put earthy type of, almost like a dirty type of smell. And if you were to smell the note by itself, it would be repulsive. But again, mix it in with the right ingredients. You have something that's really dark, something a bit mysterious, something just dirty, sexy. And anyone that has, had sex understands that sometimes it can get, you can get that smell in the room, right? That being said, civet doesn't have to be the main ingredients. And that's what we're going to see with a lot of these note combinations. They are more than just their parts. They go in there and they enhance other notes. They make them stand out. They make them stronger. They take a simple, vetiver fragrance and they make it more complex. They take a classic. If you guys haven't smelled the original Givenchy, yes, this is a shadow of what it used to be, but still, I think it's a really great fragrance that's relatively inexpensive and a unique variation to the modern ones that are coming out all the time. It seems like every time Givenchy is dropping a different gentleman, but if you go back to the original, I think 1974 version, it's pretty darn good. The next interesting note I want to talk about, and this one has become a lot more common, but the cannabis note. We've seen this popping up in a lot of fragrances recently. I think, was it Carolina Herrera's 212? They had one shaped like a skateboard that just came out. I saw has this note. The only fragrance I had in my collection was Carolina Herrera's Bad Boy Le Parfum. I guess, that particular house really likes this note. For me, I did not like it in this fragrance. It took a fragrance that I sort of liked, and it made it something that I really have tried wearing. It just smells dirty. I don't have great associations with the cannabis note. That being said, there is a fragrance out there that so many of you guys have recommended to me, and that's Black Afghano. I saw it has a cannabis note. So if anyone's gotten their nose on that and they absolutely love it, please let me know in the comments, but that's one I got to try. Now, this next note, I was really surprised I had so many fragrances in my collection with it, and that is cactus. I didn't even think really cactus had that much of a smell. I grew up in West Texas, was around cactus in our area near Midland, Odessa. I remember as a kid going out in the prickly pears, picking these and eating the sides of them and not knowing if I could or not, but hey, they tasted good. And come to find out, they do have a distinctive smell. And happily, the fragrances I have in my collection, I can actually see and get this. It's a very light, airy, clean. It's not overpowering at all. Really nice. Right here, I've got Givenchy's Xeris Rouge. You also find that note is in Tommy Hilfiger's signature fragrance, Tommy. And you've also Curve. I know so many of you guys wore Curve in the 1980s, maybe early 1990s. I think when did it come out? Late 80s, early 1990s? Somebody can correct me down in the comments. But I know this fragrance was huge for so many of you guys back in high school, and it has a nice cactus note to it. Next up, we've got Labdanum, which apparently comes from the rock rose shrub. And that may not seem really weird, except for the way that they used to collect this. Apparently, goats and sheep would rub up against this, and then they would comb the thighs of these goats and sheep to be able to get the extract of the labdanum that they would use in fragrances. Nowadays, they're able to extract labdanum in a variety of different ways, and they don't have to be massaging the thighs of goats and sheep. That didn't sound very efficient or effective to me. But, for hundreds of years, that particular scent, that particular note has been sought after, and it's been used in aromatherapy and a variety of other means, but we still see it today in a variety of great perfumes. In fact, I found it in a couple of my favorite perfumes like Apple Brandy by Kilian, Prada's Amber pour Homme. Yeah, just look in the houses of Chanel, Mugler, Parfums de Marly, and you will find fragrances with this note. Now, if you're watching this video and thinking, Antonio, why doesn't somebody engineer a set of fragrances that just make you more awesome? Well, guys, don't worry. That's what I've done over at Mission Fragrance. Seriously, if you haven't seen what we're doing over there, creating scent triggers. These go beyond fragrances. The idea is these have been engineered to help you become a better man. We're talking courage, honor, and commitment. I've got an app that goes with this that teaches you how to leverage the science of scent. Basically, you are conditioning yourself to feel a certain way. Guys, if you've ever smelled great home-cooked food that reminded you of your mom's or maybe your grandmother's, if you've ever smelled coffee and woken up, if you've ever smelled something that has put you in the zone, you know what I'm talking about. And what if you could call that on command? Guys, that's what we're doing over at Mission Fragrances, teaching you how to leverage the science of scent with our starter set right here. If this at all sounds interesting, down in the description of today's video, I'm going to link over to Mission Fragrances. Go learn more about us. It's free to sign up to the email list that will notify you on the next launch that we do, guys. But this is my passion project and something I've been really just enjoyed crafting. Beautiful fragrances don't have really super weird ingredients. They have just their unique fragrances, again, that you can condition yourself. You want to be able to perform at a higher level. You're training for a triathlon. You want to be able to impress your boss's boss when you give that presentation. You want to be able to call on the courage because you've put in the reps. Guys, this is the type of fragrance that you want to wear, that you want to check out. If this sounds at all interesting, down in the description of today's video, learn more, go over to Mission Fragrances. Now, this next note, I didn't have any fragrances in my collection that have it, and it's pretty good. It's called Skatole. And as you may be able to indicate by the name, this is literally the smell of feces, except incredibly overpowering. And there was a fragrance out there apparently called Chinese Nights that was notorious that as soon as one spray of this would clear a room. Have no idea who would want to wear this and why, but yeah, the legend is out there. I will say about Skatole that in minute traces in certain flowers, this note is present. And this is where they tried to use it, because in those minute traces, it actually has a very animalistic type of sexual, more like it really can turn some people on. People are into different things, but when combined again in minute, very small amounts in certain fragrances, this apparently was a note that, you had to use the smallest amount, and it would just it could really take a fragrance in a direction that wasn't indicated. Something normally you don't have in florals. Florals are clean, are clear, are light, but with a bit of Skatole, you could go and do a direction that, apparently a lot of the ladies liked. Now, these next two notes, I'm going to put them together because, again, I didn't have any fragrances in my collection with them, but I thought they were really cool. And that is bacon and popcorn, simply because they both smell great to me. And I love bacon and popcorn. And this makes a lot of sense. And both of these would be considered gourmand notes. If you're not familiar with gourmands, these are type of fragrances that smell almost like something you could eat. It makes a lot of sense. And in fact, if you want to be attracted, you're going to be going out with the ladies, wear a gourmand. Find something that the smell of chocolate. I think Muglaise Amen. That fragrance right there with this smell of chocolate. And I really like Crypto Mint. That one is, my daughters absolutely love that one. They stole that bottle from me. I will say that, gourmands are just attractive because who isn't attracted to something that makes your mouth water? That's what they associate with you. So again, if you want to attract the ladies, don't be afraid to wear a fragrance. Maybe not one that smells like bacon, but popcorn I think would work. But I would go more towards something a bit sweeter. In general, it's going to play it safer. But yeah, both of those notes apparently are in some perfumes, some fragrances out there, none of which I own, but I may pick one of these up at some point. So this next note is really interesting, and it was discovered in 1998, and it was actually produced in a series of events. So it's called Space Rose, and I wasn't able to find a fragrance with this, but I was able to find some stories about it. Apparently, when John Glenn went back into space in 1998, again, the oldest astronaut ever to return to space. What I love about this is apparently they even did some of the engineering of these roses in Wisconsin, and they sent them up and they bloomed in space. What's interesting is because of the conditions, the type of lighting, the zero gravity, there was no other rose that apparently had smelt like this. And John Glenn was the guy that actually collected, and they've got these special devices. So whenever they collect a fragrance, it used to be that they would have to run and destroy the product that you're collecting the fragrance from. But nowadays they actually have these monitors, these type of measurers that have very, very sensitive devices on them that will actually pick up a few of just the molecules, and then they will measure, and they can actually bring that information back, and then they can replicate the molecules. So that's how they're able to grab sense of things without destroying them, and they're able to capture some weird smells, like what's the smell of the ocean? Because think about that. Like, how do they get an ocean smell in certain notes? These devices allow them to take a variety of molecules and be able to mimic that smell. And they did this with the Space Rose. And the Space Rose apparently was super unique. I'm really surprised that no one has commercialized this. Maybe there wasn't that much of an interest, but yeah, apparently this note is out there. I have yet to see a fragrance with it. If you know of this fragrance, again, let me know in the comments below. Now, this next fragrance note is perhaps the most common weird note out there, and we see it again and again. A lot of us don't even think about what it is. What am I talking about? Musk. Specifically, I'm talking about Tonquin deer musk. And for over 1,000 years, this particular note was found in pretty much every fragrance up to the 1970s when it was outlawed. Now, the reason musk was so sought after was for a couple reasons. One, it prolonged the length of fragrances. This is done with a lot of other animals, but this one in particular would just make fragrances last for a long time. In addition, the use of musk also had a lot of sexual energy, a lot of sexual feelings to it that people couldn't put their finger on, but they knew it was there. And if you've ever worn Abercrombie & Fitch Fierce, this one right here would just draw people into stores. And so many of you guys have told me it has been one that gets compliments. It's been copied many times. This thing, yeah, the musk in it was strong. But you also saw fragrance, like Jovanov musk. Many of you guys remember this from the 1980s, maybe 1990s. Can't remember exactly when this one came out. Maybe 1970s. Correct me in the comments. But I will say that it had it right there in the title. When people think musk, they think something heavier, they think animalistic, they think sexy. And as I mentioned earlier, they're no longer collecting this from animals, which is a great thing because even though they could get it from the deer when the deer was alive, it was much easier when the deer was killed. So that's what many times they would do. But if you know your history, you just realize, wow, that's why Chanel No. 5, actually, I think it had like 15% civet, 15% musk. I mean, that thing was a stinky bomb back in the day. Nowadays, it's really rare to be able to find a fragrance that's able to replicate that. And it's also trends. People go for things that are lighter, that in their minds are cleaner. When we think of fragrances, especially in the men's world, the best sellers by far that make up like 90% of sales are going to be fragrances that have what are considered to be a clean air about them. And what video to watch next? Well, guys, if you want to smell good, I've got you covered. With this video right here, I break out some of my favorite picks for this season. So if you're interested, if you want to smell good, if you want to learn a little bit more about fragrances, check out this video. Enjoy it. It's a good one. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next video. Take care.